from now. But time to bring in another Hall of Famer who covered a lot of Johnny Bench's games in his day, and that is the Hall of Famer, the Ford Frick Award winner, and my dad, Marty Brennaman. Good morning. How are you today on this beautiful Wednesday here in Cincinnati?
I am outstanding. Every morning I wake up, it's another day that I don't have to worry about somebody getting a shovel full of dirt and pitching it away to dig a hole. So I'm in good shape. No question about it, Tom. Thank you.
Hey, I got to ask you, how am I going to handle Tracy Jones? Before we get into the serious stuff here for a second, I don't know if you saw any of his interview on this program yesterday. He joins us every Tuesday and Thursday. His comments blew up on the internet yesterday. You've worked with this guy for a long, long time. Do you have any advice on how we handle him on this show twice a week?
No, I do not have a single bit of advice. And that statement comes out of a guy who has done radio with him during the baseball season. I don't know why the station doesn't do it year-round, because we are much more eloquent in terms of knowledge about something other than baseball. Having said that, 21 years he and I have done that Brennaman and Jones on baseball show on 700 WLW. And the only way I can deal with this situation is to roll with the punches. I mean, you have to, you intuitively realize at some point that he's going down a road that will not be good. And he gives you enough advance notice that you can figure out a way on the spur of the moment to avoid that disaster. I know yesterday he once again touched on Tom Brady.
Yep.
He made a comment. He made a comment that I'm not a big fan of. He used a term that I'm not a big fan of. But that's the essence of what he's all about. Now, I will say this: he never ceases to amaze me, because yesterday he brought up names. You all were talking about Ron Yeri, one of the great players of all time. He talked about, Paul Krause and Fred Cox and people like that. And I'm thinking, I'm amazed that he knows NFL players by name, just rolling off the tip of his tongue and going back probably 35 years, 40 years maybe. So I was impressed with that. That he has a knowledge about something other than baseball, because at the end of the day, he's a pretty one-dimensional guy.
One-dimensional
you understand
guy?
What I'm saying?
You just gave him a bunch of credit for talking about something other than baseball, and you're saying he's one-dimensional.
Well, I said that because I am. I'm well-read. I read books. I'm reading Stephen King's latest novel. By the way, anybody that reads and are fans of Stephen King, the new book has been out about a month entitled Fairy Tale. Very long book. It'll keep you on the edge of your seat. Great book.
Well, I'm a big Stephen King fan. I've read most of his stuff, so I will have to check it out.
You'll love this one, then. You'll love this one.
Well, I can't wait.
Okay.
I want to ask you a little bit about, and we touched on this a little bit the last time you were here. The Reds lose again last night. They now have 95 losses with 7 games to go. Obviously, they need to find a way to win 3 games to avoid a 100-loss season. Like I said, we touched on it a little bit before, and I asked Tracy about it yesterday. Does it really matter if you lose 98, 99, or 102?
The only thing that matters is, from my perspective, is it does single that season out as the ultimate in futility. Now, and I say that based on the team that I broadcast for back in the early 80s. Well, I don't know what year. Years escape me, but 83, 84, somewhere along them, but where they lost 101 games, I think. And when people periodically bring up something like this, they automatically go back to that season. That's the only thing that I can think of where it really matters. I mean, given the fact the Reds have had only one 100-loss season in the history of their franchise, and it's up for grabs in 2022, so that would make it obviously 2 in the entire history going back to 1869. That singles them out automatically. But other than that, I don't think it means anything.
All right, the Yankees clinched the American League East. It's been a really weird team when you stop and think about it. They got off to the great start And, I mean, they look like one of the best Yankee teams of all time, and that's saying something.
Yep.
And then they went through roughly a month and a half where they couldn't buy a win. And now all of a sudden, here we are. They're going to be the East champions in a very stacked, in my opinion, American League. I don't think there's any pushover, whether it's Toronto's in there. We know Cleveland's in there. I don't think there's a layup or a gimme, maybe in either league, but especially the American League. You've known Aaron Boone a long, long time. Are you surprised? Maybe isn't the right word. What are your thoughts of him as a manager in the way he deals with everything?
I'm a big fan. I think that you have an abundance of managers in the American League that are solid, legitimate candidates for Manager of the Year in that league. You've got Aaron, you've got Terry Francona, you've got Buck in Baltimore, you've got Dusty in Houston. The list goes on and on. But I think Aaron Boone, the reason I think a lot of the ineptitude that they went through had a lot to do with injuries. Because I don't know that there's been another club in the American League that's had to deal with more injury over the course of this season than the New York Yankees have. And so I think Aaron has done a wonderful job. If this team doesn't make the World Series, and I think we all know what standards the Steinbrenner family has and Brian Cashman, I would be stunned if they did not win the World Series that they let him go. I think they'd be making a major mistake. I think he's an outstanding manager. I think the players will really like him. He's got some fire in him. I'm a big fan of Aaron Boone, but then again, I say that with great prejudice because I'm a big fan of the Boone family, period.
Mm-hmm. I know without even asking you, you said it before. At the end of the day, when you start to watch the baseball playoffs, is it safe to say that Marty Brennaman is rooting for the Houston Astros to win the whole thing?
Yes. And obviously for one reason. One, there's no bigger fan of Dusty Baker than I am. And secondly, there are those idiots out there that think, well, he can't make the Hall of Fame because he's never won a World Series. I think that's the biggest bunch of crap I've ever heard. He's in the top 3 or 4 all time in wins. He lost the World Series, the one that you did against the the playoffs against the San Francisco Giants, and also lost the World Series against the LA Angels. But if in fact that would put those dissenters to rest, then I would like to see him walk away with a world championship. But short of him winning it, I've got a lot of other fans. I'm a big fan of Terry Francona. He's been a dear friend of mine forever. I mentioned Aaron. If I had a priority, I would say, my priority would be for Dusty to win it. If he couldn't, I got a whole lot of other candidates I'd root for.
I want to ask you a little bit about Terry Francona a minute, because I think anybody who's ever had a chance to spend time around him, and you've spent a lot of time around him, you guys have stayed in close contact forever. When he was in Philly as a manager, Boston as a manager, now with Cleveland, one of the most likable people in the world out there. There are those that say a manager doesn't make a huge difference in baseball. I've never been a believer in that. I don't think you're a believer in that. I think what he's done with a team in Cleveland is one of the most amazing things I've ever seen, because I think even more than an average baseball fan, not the guys that follow this stuff religiously every day, especially in Cleveland, but I'm not sure that even a better than average baseball fan could name you 3 players on that Cleveland team. It's unbelievable what he has done up there.
Might be the best managerial job he's ever done. Because you're right. He's got a bunch of no-names on that club as far as I'm concerned. And I know those, quote, no-names are guys that can play. Otherwise, they wouldn't be in the position that they're in. But I think he's a kind of rare commodity that can raise the level of abilities because of all the attributes that he brings to the table as a major league manager. And those things have been borne out over years, as you mentioned, with Philly and Boston and in Cleveland. For me, he's just a very special person who was raised in a great baseball family. His dad, Tito, was an outstanding hitter in the American League with the Cleveland Indians. I don't know that you can offer up a candidate more worthy of another Manager of the Year award, because he's won them before. 2 world championships with the Boston Red Sox, got screwed in Philadelphia when they ran him out of town. No, I agree with everything you say about him as a manager. He's as honest and as forthcoming as a day is long. And he will tell a player straight out what he thinks. We saw that act in front of God and the world on the mound with Trevor Bauer when he threw the ball into the center field or into the seats in the outfield, whatever it was. He's a real honest person. And that's the most important word of all, because I think all great managers have a level of honesty about them over and above what the normal individual in baseball has. He will tell you straight out and you can take it to the bank. And I think that's part of the big reason why he's been so successful.
You know, you just mentioned Trevor Bauer, and you and I did not discuss some of the topics we were going to bring up today. And if you would prefer not to go down this road, I totally get it. But whether you like the guy or not, and, you know, look, he went before a judge in a court of law in California. There were no indictments, no charges. He wasn't guilty of anything. Now, was he guilty of making some bad decisions? Everybody's guilty of making bad decisions. I don't care who you are, right? But,
correct.
You know, when you draw an analogy of his situation and Deshaun Watson's situation, okay, and we all know his situation, right? He did go to court, ultimately not found guilty. He's paid off a bunch of people. Everybody knows that's the deal. Has baseball been fair to Trevor Bauer, not allowing him to pitch for now almost 2 years?
Not for me. As far as I'm concerned, Deshaun Watson should have been thrown out of the National Football League for all time, not just for X number of games. As far as Trevor Bauer is concerned, maybe one day we will find out what the real story has been. If there is such a thing, behind the fact that here we are and he's still sitting. After a judge threw out a case, I think that's the way it happened, that he listened to all the evidence and he said the prosecutorial side had no grounds to impose any kind of penalty on him from a judicious standpoint. So, no, I would really love to know why this thing has gone on as long as it has. That's one question. And the other one is, why in the world did Deshaun Watson get away with so little penalty based on all the evidence that's been brought to bear? And you have, 20 plus civil suits filed by different women, all of which I think have been settled out of court, or at least the ones that we know about. And yet the NFL takes a position that it took on him. I guessed at that decision without any question.
Getting back to current baseball for a second. I think across the board it is safe to say, and I can say this, even though personally we did not have the greatest relationship and worked together for a number of years in Arizona, and that's Buck Showalter. I think there's an interesting, sort of avenue for both Buck and for Dusty Baker. Now, Dusty's won more games, but everywhere Buck Showalter has gone, he has won. I mean, he even had some crappy teams in Baltimore that found a way to string things together, and he was there a long time, but, managed the Yankees, took them to the playoffs, managed the Diamondbacks, took them to the playoffs, Rangers took them to the playoffs, going to take the Mets to the playoffs. Do you think that Buck Showalter has to win a World Series? You talked about Dusty. Does Buck Showalter have to win a World Series to get in the Hall of Fame?
That's a great question because, and I say this because I truly believe it. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. There are a lot of people that don't like Buck Showalter or did not like the earlier Buck Showalter. I haven't seen him probably, I don't know, the four years, three. Yeah, definitely at least that much. But I get the impression that he probably has mellowed a little bit from the way he was when he was managing the Yankees, when he was managing the Arizona Diamondbacks. People love Dusty for the most part. People really love Dusty Baker. I think that there are guys that have personal dislikes about certain people. And so whether or not those people are qualified to be in a Hall of Fame, in this case, baseball, maybe they don't vote for him. There were a lot of people who didn't like Steve Carlton because he would not talk to writers after he felt like, he was not treated right by a columnist with the Philadelphia Inquirer. But his position was, I'm not going to talk to anybody. I'm not going to say I'm not talking to the media anymore, but I'll talk to you, but I won't talk to your dad. That's I got a problem with. But once he made that decision, he was not going to talk to the media. He stood by it, and it made no difference who it was, whether it was a network person, whether it was some guy working for a biweekly newspaper. I think he was wronged. He eventually got into the Hall of Fame, but I think it took a lot longer than it should have. Because people use their personal likes or dislikes against a guy. And I think that's a problem that Buck may well have unless Buck has become a different person. I think from a managerial standpoint, there isn't anybody better in baseball at managing and running a game than Buck Showalter. No question about it.
Yeah, he's an outstanding man. And I think you're right. I think there are people maybe in New York, specifically in New York, who were around that Buck Showalter that you talked about back in his Yankee days 1,000 years ago now. He comes back to the town as manager of the Mets. They've righted that ship, and I think they look like, if the pitching is healthy, I think they look like they have a chance to win the whole thing. Do you think it's slam dunk the Dodgers are going to win it? I know they've had a better year than everybody else, but, I mean, they've got some issues with their pitching right now in terms of health as well. Is it a slam dunk they're going to the World Series? Not win it, but going.
No, I don't think so. I think that once again, Atlanta is going to pose a very, very tough mountain to overcome, but so too will the New York Mets. You've got some good clubs in this league. You may have more good teams in the American League, but you've got some darn good clubs in the Dodgers and the Mets and the Atlanta Braves. So no, I don't think it's a slam dunk at all. I think from a position standpoint, not talking about pitching, and pitching is obviously going to determine at the end of the day who's a world champion in 2022, as it is in every year. But I think from a position standpoint, they probably have the best 8 in the National League. Now, whether or not their pitching is going to be healthy enough and hold up long enough to get them another world championship is going to be determined. But I don't think for anybody to say you can take it to the bank, they're going to win the World Series, I think that's a wrong approach to take without any question.
Shifting gears to college football. Your alma mater had a chance to make a serious statement over the weekend. A Notre Dame team that was struggling, and they finally got their first win over Cal. Didn't look good doing it in Notre Dame. They come down there to Carolina. Carolina is scoring points like crazy, and Notre Dame just bludgeoned them. What happened?
I think a combination of two things happened. One, Carolina's defense is horrible. I mean, they couldn't guard you and me and Casey if we were wide receivers on the Carolina club, and I'm 80 years old, for God's sake. They can't defense the run. They can't defense the pass. I understand that they had a players-only meeting, the defensive team did yesterday, to try and talk this thing out amongst themselves without any coaches present. Their offense, there isn't any question. I don't think their offensive line blocked very well against Notre Dame. They have a couple of freshman running backs that are outstanding. And the quarterback, I think Drake May is going to be one of the great quarterbacks that's ever played at Carolina. And as a redshirt freshman, he's getting it done right now. But he looked like he was totally mystified at times against the Notre Dame defense. I think Carolina should have beaten them. They were favored to win in Chapel Hill, and they laid a major egg. And if they're going to have any kind of decent season, they've got to get themselves together defensively, because I don't think they got to worry about the offense as long as the line can provide the kind of pass protection for the freshman May that they're capable of. But to me, they go 3-0. They beat an Appalachian State team that when people say, well, Carolina against Appalachian State. Well, all of a sudden, after Appalachian State goes down and beats Texas A&M, all of a sudden that becomes a more impressive win than it appeared at first. But then the next 2 weeks, they play a couple of patsies, one of which was Georgia State, and they had to struggle like hell to win that game. So they've got to get themselves together defensively very, very quickly it's going to be a long year in Chapel Hill if they can't.
Now, I know you watch the Bengalis religiously. They get the first win of the year against the Jets. Are you going to the game tomorrow night? I mean, you've got all your highfalutin friends with skyboxes and stuff like that, probably a limo they'd send out to pick you up, all the sponsors you're doing, sponsorships and that kind of thing. Are you headed down there tomorrow night?
Can I ask you a question?
Of course.
Do you know how many times I've seen the Bengals play in person? Since 1977.
How many? One time.
That was in 1977 when in the snow I saw O.J. Simpson rush for, I don't know, close to 200 yards. And Dick Enberg and Diane Drysdale were the voices of the Rams. I'm sorry. I saw him play another time against the Rams the same year. And that was when he had the big rushing game in the snow, and Enberg and Drysdale were the play-by-play voices. That's the only time I've seen the Bengals play since 77. Figure up the number of years. It's a long damn time. So, no, in answer to your question, I will be sitting home and I will be watching. Thank God. Well, I got Amazon Prime, so I can watch that too. But I'll be watching it. And I'll look forward to that game because I think it's got a chance to really be a good football game. I'm terribly sorry. You gave me the news about Reeder. That's a major hit for that defense.
No doubt.
It's unfortunate that he won't be playing.
I'm just surprised that that you don't decide to go ahead, right now while the weather's still good and head on down there. I mean, what do you got to do on a Thursday night? I mean, I know you got people asking you to go here and speak there, and why not go down to a game and check it out? I mean, you did like 40 events last Saturday in one single day, last Friday or Saturday, whatever it was.
5 events in one day.
Yeah, and so obviously at 80 years young, you're still able to get out there and do stuff and be active and be fit and, with it and on and all that kind of thing. So, I mean, would you consider, maybe not tomorrow night, but would you consider going to a Bengals game before the weather turns this year?
Do you have a schedule of the Bengals at hand?
Casey, can you guys pull that up, please? Casey and Brandon, say hello.
Ask Casey who they're playing the first Sunday in December.
Well, in December, it's going to be freezing down there.
Wait a minute. Does he have a schedule?
They are playing – you want to go to the Kansas City game, Marty?
That's a great big old bingo. It's not a matter of whether I want to or not. I am going.
All right, well – Tom had originally committed to playing some beer pong with me at a tailgate. So if we can get you in on that action too, let's go as a group.
He's not going down there. Let me tell you something.
No,
He's going to be. If you're going on December the 1st, that means that you are not going to be exposed to the elements that day. Is that a fair question?
That's another big old bingo. That's exactly correct.
Who are you sitting down there with? Would it be one of our outstanding sponsors in Encore Technologies?
You know what? You have done a lot of homework. Yeah, my good friend JB.
Not Johnny Bench, John Burns.
That would be my good friend John Burns, yes.
Okay, so you're going down to the Kansas City game.
And that's a pretty good football game.
Is that a day game? What is that? Is that a 4:30 game?
It
gotta be a 4:30.
Oh, it's 4:25. Yeah,
it's got to be. I knew it would be the late game. Yeah, the big game.
Amanda and I will be there. We'll be there. Yeah.
Okay. Well, why don't you ask your buddy John Burns about tickets for tomorrow night?
No, I like to sit home and watch the game and take care of Millie and our cat baby and get up when I want to, and I'm not going to be bothered by having to talk to a bunch of people. I'm going to concentrate on Tua and Joe Burrow, and I'm going to enjoy the night immensely.
Okay. Before we let you go, we're going to have Johnny Bench as part of our big interview that we do here every Wednesday.
Right.
You've known Johnny forever.
Yes.
I find him a fascinating guy in a lot of ways. And there's another guy who, a lot of people love. There's some people that, whatever, and the whole thing with him and Pete and so on and so forth. We're not getting into that. But just as a player, over the long haul, he has to be the greatest Red you ever saw, right? I mean, he has to be over the long haul. Is that fair?
You know what I say? when I speak to groups, and naturally a Big Red Machine always comes up, and the individuals and then the team itself. And I will say at some point, he's the greatest player at a given position that I've ever seen. And I will have people come up to me and say, he's not the greatest player in the history of baseball. I said, I didn't say that. I said, he's the greatest player at a given position. He's the guy who revolutionized the way the catching position was played. He took the Pirates completely out of their running game in the 1975 National League Championship Series. And that was a club that had great speed and stole a lot of bases. He could take into his hand the ability from the other team's standpoint. There was nothing he could not do given the position he played. He was just amazing to watch. I think about all the other catchers that have come down the pike since he was on top of his game back in the late 60s and throughout the decade of the 70s. And there was nobody that I could say, this guy excites you so much as a catcher, the way that he did. He played hurt. I can't say enough about the way he performed, but at his position and the respect that he had from everybody in the game of baseball in the years in which he played in Cincinnati.
All right, I got 4 pages worth of questions here in doing some research on Johnny Bench. I don't know if a single one of them really is any good. But if you had to ask Johnny Bench one question, I'm going to throw you on the spot. Is there a question that you've never heard him asked? Or a topic you've never heard him asked about?
That's tough.
Yeah.
Let me tell you something. And this has nothing to do with baseball.
Yeah, good. I don't like the baseball stuff.
The thing I had the most respect for, and he may not talk about it, I don't know, is the fact that he has basically raised 2 boys.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying he's not had some help, but the fact of the matter is, when all is said and done at the end of the day, and these 2 kids grow up to be the kind of fine individuals that I think they'll grow up to be, he will be the person who will have to receive the lion's share. And I we talk about so-and-so is a great broadcaster, so-and-so is a great player. Okay, that's all well and good for me. What kind of person is he personally? And from a parental standpoint, what he's done with those 2 boys to me is just absolutely amazing. And he's not looking around for anybody to pat him on the back and tell him what a great dad he's been, but a great dad he has been without any question.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm hoping we get into that because I think
I hope you can.
I think there are a lot of people that feel like you do on topics like this. I mean, it's one thing to hear him talk about hitting the home run. I think it was off Dave Justy, right? Game 5
Correct.
In the playoffs in '72, and yeah, you can talk about that kind of stuff, but at the end of the day, Johnny Bench is what, almost 80 years old now?
Yeah, I got him by a year or 2, I guess.
Yeah, and I mean, he's still raising 2 boys by himself. Not like you said, has some help, no doubt, but raising 2 boys by himself down in Florida, and good for him. Good for him.
Yeah, the other thing is, from a baseball standpoint, Tom, from my perspective, he had the greatest flair for the dramatic of any player I've ever seen. The home run he hit off Justy, the home run he hit for the Reds' only run against the Houston Astros at Riverfront on Johnny Bench night.
Yep.
And he hit a home run that night before thousands of people. He just had an ability to rise to the occasion at moments in which that team needed him the most.
All right, Dad, we thank you for your time, and cozy up with everybody tomorrow night with Millie.
Yeah, I will
Baby
cozy
and
up
Amanda.
with myself.
What? You just said you're
cozy
watching
up with myself.
You're not. Is
with
Amanda not going to
myself.
watch a game with you?
Oh yeah, well, she's a Steelers fan.
Oh boy.
Yikes. Well, she was raised in Ashland, Kentucky.
I understand that. Boy.
Now she pulls for the. She'll watch some because she pulls for them. If they play the Steelers, that's a different deal. But and I don't have a problem with that because she was raised a Steelers fan.
Okay, that's fair enough.
You understand?
All right.
Okay.
All right. Well, love you. I'll talk to you later. I'll keep you posted, by the way, on how Luke does today. I know you got a busy day, and he's got the big
Yeah, I'd love to be there, but I can't. But let me know when you get out there.
Yeah. He's already off and running. So,
okay, pal.
Going to race there afterwards. I'll talk to you later on.
Give my boys the best.
Fellas, you want to say hello to Marty?
Marty, how'd your cooking do on Friday? I didn't get a chance to stop by. How'd the cooking segment go?
It was sensational. I mean, Amanda and I cooked Italian meatballs, a great dish that takes no time to fix with that delicious Laura's lean meat.
God.
It was so – I see you working.
Well, I mean, Brandon brings this up. It's the only – I mean,
it's my favorite.
His questions are so tired. They all come back to Laura's
No, his
lean.
questions are damn good.
They're tired. Much like his
No, they're not,
producing.
because you see another side of me. See, you're going to talk with Bench about what a great dad he's been. And Brandon brings in elements completely away. In fact, I had a person on Instagram. I posted a picture with an apron on at the stove in our kitchen.
I saw it.
And somebody texted me, "You are really sexy." Did you hear what I said?
I heard what you said.
Can I just, for personal gratification, I will never ask about Laura's lean ever again. Can I just get one even jerky?
Yeah, I'll take care of you. Just let me know.
See, it always comes back to this.
Even jerky right now, Marty. Give it to me.
Casey's even bored with it.
I know he is. I know Casey. Casey has to add an element of normalcy into the conversation, something that you at times woefully fail in.
How do you like my beard? I'm going into savage mode because of my good friend Zim Hude. I told him I wouldn't shave again until the Bengals, if they ever. I'm not going to shave unless they lose. How do you like it so far?
I'm not a big fan of beards, Sam. You do whatever you feel like you have to do.
Well, I mean, my man Zim Hude, he comes on with us twice a week.
I know. And I'm very impressed with him, by the way.
Yep.
That's a wonderful addition to your program because I think the guy is really good.
I did just think of a real question because I saw it on Twitter. It's not about Laura's lean. Today's 15 years since Jay Bruce's home run against the Astros, the walk-off. Both of you guys called that, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Sure did.
We did.
Sure did. One of the top moments in my career in terms, people say, what are your favorite calls? They think Pete's hit, Brownie's perfect game, et cetera. That might be my single favorite call. That one and the 500 and 600th home runs from Junior.
Yeah.
That's all I was going to say. Knocking the door down to the 500 club's one of my favorites.
Knocking the door down.
That was number 500, yeah.
Knocking the door down.
Yeah.
All right. Well, have a good one.
All right,
rest
guys,
of the day.
have a good day.
All right.
See you, Marty.
You talk to Tracy again. Tell him I said hello. Keep up the bad work.
Yeah, we'll talk to him tomorrow.
I'll see you.
Thursday. Okay. See you.
All right.
We thank Marty Brennaman for joining us. That was a lot of fun. Always is having him on the program. We appreciate his time coming on the program. He's a busy guy. He's got stuff to do. And he finds a way to sneak it in for his son, trying to build up what's going to be a future dynasty here on Off the Bench, fellas. We're on our way.